To make sense of the world that we live in, we have none other than Professor of Economics at Harvard University, Professor Gita Gopinath, with us right here on ET Now. Thank you very much for being with us. You're becoming some sort of a Davos veteran every year. But this is a very interesting Davos. This is a very interesting time to be here because we live in a very different world. Nobody thought Britain is going to exit the European Union, and nobody really thought that Donald Trump will be the president of the United States. How do you map the world we're living in today?
I think it's a world with tremendous uncertainty. We could see the biggest country in the world in terms of GDP disengaging from the rest of the world. I mean, Trump has made many statements that seem to suggest that he's going to step back from engaging with the world. When all these years the US has been center stage. And interestingly, at Davos, the person who's coming is President Xi Jinping of China.
That's right.
And it's like a space that he's going to fill in. So, you know, the dynamics are very different from what it's been in the past.
So you're actually prompting me to a lot of next questions. Let's begin with Donald Trump himself. While he's making the statements that he is, which is about building a wall and having a border tax and shunning out everybody who's taking away jobs from the US and making in the US, his cabinet and the people he's choosing are speaking a very different discourse. Is there a disconnect, or is this a very cleverly crafted strategy? Let me be the good cop and you guys be the bad ones.
Oh, let's wait and see. I think everybody is very confused about the whole overall outlook right now, because for the exact reason that you said, that the people that he's picked are people who, some of whom are strongly pro-trade, some of whom are strongly anti-trade, and he himself seems to be anti-trade. So what I'm hearing right now is that there might be a lot of big words coming out in terms of we might be stepping back and we might be more anti-trade, but in terms of actual practice, that would not show up. But the bigger concern is that what they're definitely going in for is cutting back taxes, increasing government spending. So the combination of a bigger fiscal deficit, bigger infrastructure spending is going to show up with higher interest rates. And usually that goes along with a bigger trade deficit, a bigger current account deficit. So we might end up, if not now, with strong anti-protectionism. It might show up in a year from now, even more strongly.
So more protectionist stance, even more strongly,
Yes,
years down the line.
Yes, exactly.
But just to understand, if the world is indeed going to be what it is, and it looks like the US will be more inward-looking, globalization is on the retreat, what will it mean for the world at large? What will it mean for markets like India, for other emerging markets, which have really thrived on globalization? Because we are seeing a retreat of globalization of sorts.
It will be a negative. I mean, that's for sure. If the anti-protectionism talk gets translated into actual action by the US, it's not going to be one-sided. It's not as if the US is going to be, we're going to slap these tariffs on you and nobody else is going to be retaliatory. So everybody else is going to retaliate, and that's going to be bad for the world as a whole. And for emerging markets, it's going to be terrible. I mean, Mexico already has been hit with a sudden stop in capital flows.
That's right.
Because of all the rhetoric coming out of Trump's mouth.
Do you see many more companies following suit? He almost told GM to do what Ford and Fiat did. Do you see many more companies in the US looking increasingly inwards, increasingly looking to make and manufacture in the US, even if it may not fit their business model really?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, he's going to have to deliver on his promises on corporate tax reform. I mean, the expectation is that he's going to be very business-friendly. He's going to cut corporate taxes. He's going to deregulate. If he follows through on that, then, I can see why people are putting pause on their plans to move out of the U.S. right now. But if it's not going to play out the way he's saying it will, then I'm sure they will have to reconsider.
Do you believe the US Federal Reserve, and a lot of people have spoken about this, some people believe that the US Fed's rate hike is perhaps the beginning of return to normalcy by other central banks as well. Do you really see this as a possibility? Because there is a counter opinion that believes that US Fed rates may actually have to go down. They have walked up too fast, too early.
No, I think at this point the expectation should be that the Fed is going to raise rates. The speed at which it claims that it'll do 3 more rate hikes in 2017. So I do think that the combination of fiscal policy coming out of the Trump administration and what we're hearing from the Federal Reserve, you should expect interest rates to go up, which means we will see a bigger divergence between rates in the US and rates in other parts of the world.
And that is obviously not good for emerging markets like ourselves, which have really thrived on inflows. If I were to just turn focus and talk about China, Xi Jinping is here, the first state visit by a Chinese president. What does that mean? Is he out there to take the vacuum that will perhaps be created if Donald Trump does look inwards, does retreat?
I'm sure that's a part of his considerations. That seems like the most obvious thing. And that would be the right thing to do. I mean, China is now a large economy, the second largest in the world. And this is very, very curious because it used to be the case that China was a little more inward-looking and protectionist. But now they're the ones who might step in and actually be the global player.
So this raw nationalism that we are seeing rise all across the world, also in Europe, is the worst of the Brexit shock behind us? I mean, the Italian vote, if anything to go by, obviously does show up room for concern as well. But do you believe the worst of this raw nationalism that we're seeing on the rise is behind us?
I don't think we've peaked yet. I mean, we still have the French elections, after Trump's election in the US, I think anything can happen. So I don't think we've peaked there. But I think we're pretty close to the top at this point. And I hope that there is going to be an end and we're actually going to come back to normal.
So let's turn focus to India. And you're a keen India watcher. You're some sort of a global insider on India. The big event that some people spoke about here in Davos has been demonetization. It's been an exercise, a very bold but a very controversial move. I'm not going to discuss the merits or the demerits, but let's move ahead. How long will we take back to return to normal? And IMF yesterday has cut India's growth forecast by 1 percentage point, largely on account of demonetization. Some people believe it could be lower than 6.6. Where do you see growth settle for this year?
Yeah, it is hard to come up with a great deal of certainty about what the number is going to be. I know that the IMF has come up with a percentage point lower. It could even be more than that. It could be 2 percentage points lower. The biggest hits, of course, are going to be the informal economy, and like I've mentioned this before, we don't measure that very well, and so we might not actually see that in the GDP numbers. But in some sense, this was an economy that was doing well, that everybody's eyes were on, and had a lot of strength in it. Unfortunately, right now, the sentiment is that this particular move has certainly dented confidence in the economy.
Talking about denting confidence, the RBI was a very revered institution. People quoted the central bankers of India, especially people like Raghuram Rajan. Do you believe in this entire process? Has the RBI ceded ground on its own autonomy and its own independence? Because some unions in RBI do seem to think so.
Oh, these are certainly very difficult times for the RBI. And, my own reading, everybody I spoke to, the impression very much is that the RBI needs to really worry about where it is in terms of its reputation and its credibility. And it needs to step up. I mean, it would be fantastic to have the RBI governor speak more and explain a little more about what's going to happen in the next couple of months. But it is a matter of concern.
Are people around the world talking about the credibility of the RBI that has been dented, and what exactly can be done besides, of course, more communication that we in the media would want as well?
Yes, actually, I mean, I'm talking to a few people here at Davos and seeing what they think, and yes, I think it's come up. The RBI's credibility has come up as a question over here too. I mean, among the things that need to be done is, besides communicating, part of the communication will be telling the country how many more months this process is going to take, where it's going to end. I mean, there was even confusion about when's the last date for actually being able to exchange your notes. Yes. I mean, that's really surprising and shocking.
Indeed. If I return focus to the union budget coming in the backdrop of demonetization, what are some of the focus areas do you think the budget should have? Because there is already this raging debate on should there be fiscal prudence or should the government throw its weight behind spending, boost infrastructure and all of that?
Well, they've been certainly talking about cutting corporate taxes. That would be a good thing, making India more competitive in that particular measure. More than the budget, I think I want to see the GST get implemented. It get implemented well. There was a recent meeting that seems to have gone well. Those are the areas where they have to push, and they have to stick to fiscal prudence.
Indeed. On that note, thanks very much for speaking to us. Professor Gita Gopinath in conversation with us at Davos right here on ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ET Now, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ET Now Live. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ET Now.